It's always an honor and a pleasure to be here. I was just sitting there thinking when the doctor was speaking of when I was 8 years old. I'm originally from Louisiana, from Fort Worth, Louisiana, and I was just reflecting on when I was younger, how I used to run through the fields and catch grasshoppers and butterflies, and getting stung by bees and stuff like that. And to me, that was fun. Skating rocks across the lake and stuff, that was fun. But as I grew older, I come from a church where my father was the pastor, my mother was the evangelist, and I was the lead singer of the Young Disciples. I used to bring daisies and sunflower flowers to girls in the church that I liked and stuff like that. and it was or candy and write little love notes, and if you like me, circle yes or no. Stuff like that. And it's funny because at that age, I didn't realize that when I was 13 years old, I'd be dropping out of school and joining a gang. At that time in my life, I didn't realize that I'd be selling drugs at the age of 13. That I'd be in and out of the youth detention center. That I would leave my mother standing on the corner crying when she asking me if this is the type of lifestyle that I plan to live for the rest of my life. At that time, I was running through the fields and catching grasshoppers and butterflies. I didn't realize that I would leave my mother standing on the corner crying and tell her, like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm going to run the streets and I'm going to sell drugs and I'm going to gang bang for the rest of my life. At that time, I didn't realize that 7 days before my 19th birthday, I'd be standing in front of a judge facing 30 years to life for murder. I didn't realize all that when I was running through the fields catching grasshoppers and butterflies. And at that point when I was catching grasshoppers and butterflies, I was sitting there reflecting, and that's when I was in touch with humanity. That's when I was in touch with my heart. The joys and beauty of life. But as Mr. T was talking about in the theme of today's topic, that spring was spring, I realized that I was a rose that grew from concrete. That a lot of people in prison are roses that have to grow through concrete. But that rose is determined to grow. That rose is determined to sprout. That flower is determined to blossom. I went to prison 7 days before my 19th birthday. Scared. Didn't know what was next. Heard about people bigger and tougher than me screaming in the middle of the night from getting raped. Seeing guys getting stabbed up. My best friend serving 45 years to life right now. He says release date is 2046. And I say all that because when you're in prison, it's like you have nothing else. You have nothing else to distract you. All you have is you in that cell. When you can get back in contact with your humanity. When you can look back over your life. And all that matters is those moments when you're running through the fields chasing butterflies and grasshoppers. I spent 13 years of my life in prison. And I thought I was the toughest guy on the block. I thought I was a thug, if you will. Until I ended up going to school and I learned that I couldn't even read past the 6th grade reading level. How stupid was I? How tough was I? Still getting in trouble inside of the prison system. I ended up spending 3 years of my life in solitary confinement. In a single cell, no bigger than the bathroom. And it was then when I had my moment. It was then when I became face to face with my humanity, with my heart, with what I wanted for the rest of my life. And I begin to study. I begin to speak life into myself. The Bible said that sometimes you got to encourage yourself. And I encouraged myself. Got out of the single cell and went to Rawway State Prison. And there's when I seen guys getting raped and stabbed up. And because I was scared, I asked to get moved out of the prison. And they moved me to Riverfront State Prison, where I met a friend of mine, Earl Amin. And it was then where I began to educate myself. Going to school and graduated, got my GED, began to go on the Project Inside for college, and got certified as a business technician, and took the paralegal course and graduated, and things of that nature. And I told myself, if I can do this, if I put my mind to accomplishing this, what else could I accomplish? I was transferred out of Riverfront State Prison and transferred to Bayside, where I met Mr. T and Miss Susan. And it was always something in me. That little boy that was crying out for attention, that little boy that was crying out for somebody to pour back into me. And heart to heart, took on that responsibility to pour into me. And I told him what I wanted to do when I went home. How I wanted to reach back and save lives. Speak to young guys so they won't have to walk down the same path I walked down. And they encouraged that dream. The richest place on earth is the prison system. The most talented people is in the prison system. People that could come out and change our world. But we walk away from them. We give up on them. But I just don't stand here as an invite from the heart to heart, but I also stand here as an advocate for those who are in prison, as a voice. Speaking and saying that if you pour back into us, look what we can become. Look at the rose that grew from the concrete. I stand here today as not just one of the senior advocate councils for the urban league of Essex County. I stand here as the CEO and president of Save One. I own my own house now. I pulled up in the driveway and Susan asked me, whose car is that? I said, that's my car. And I got license behind it to prove it. And small things like that we take for granted, but to me that meant a lot to say that's mine. I bought that. I worked for that. And I wanted to bring one of my students here because it's so much potential there. It's so much potential there. I'm the lead counselor on Face Forward, a grant that's funded through the Department of Labor for the urban league of Essex County, where we work with individuals between 18 to 24 that was involved in the juvenile justice system. And most of my students come there and they look up to me. They say, Mr. Moore, you're my mentor. You're my big brother. And it really does something to me because that's heart to heart. That's the connection. And it's just like when Susan and Mr. T poured into me, I pour into them. And I tell them that you're better than your situation. I went to prison, but I'm not a prisoner. I have a state number, but I'm not an inmate. So I guess my message here today is to touch, move, and inspire. And the Bible tells us that, as I was telling the doctor, that our people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And when there's no vision, our people are perishing. It's up to us to paint that picture for them, to encourage that vision that those who are in prison have for themselves. And trust me, it's a lot of people that's in prison. I'm just the firstborn amongst many to come. I said thank you.